stories. It's one of my passions. So, speaking of passions and passionate beliefs, I also passionately believe that a long lecture after dinner really aids in digestion. So to that end, my long lecture, joking, it's just 10 minutes, is about April, April the picture book. So much like human beings, April has also evolved. When Anastasia first spoke to me about April in August when I was in India, we brainstormed and we discussed writing an origin story, an April origin story. And we pictured April as a bionic person with a hurdle to overcome, something like a mental health problem or debilitating shyness or a stammer for a big speech, anything that explained how they became so awesome. Then we brainstormed. My daughters also brainstormed. You can see them sitting there. So here's one of their sketches as April with April as a bionic person, April in a rather boxy form, in an amorphous form, and their little girl, so April had to be a unicorn at some point. And then April graduated to becoming a genie. This is one of my earlier sketches. So April the genie is coming out of a lab in the shape of a human brain. And to depict April's ability to multitask, I drew April an extra pair of hands. So this extra pair of hands renders European digits obsolete. But luckily, this slightly horrifying version of April was also rendered obsolete, and we arrived at this, April, the gentle neutral robot. So this video gives you a little behind the scenes view of what goes on by crafting a picture. So for me, my process is that I first write the text, and when I'm about 90% satisfied, it's impossible to be 100% satisfied with anything, as anyone who creates can say. I start illustrating. So in this case, I first wrote the story in prose, but I love writing picture books. My kids love writing picture books, and whenever I do author visits in schools, I've noticed that children sort of perk up and say, "Oh, that rhymes." So I decided to do that with this book, and I made the text rhyme. And yeah, the font. I decided to go with the open dyslexic font because it has this science fiction vibe. And also, more importantly, it also helps those who have reading difficulties like dyslexia or little children who are just learning to read, to well read. So that's why I went with this font. So these are the first 2 pages of the book. And with some brainstorming, Megan, Anastasia, and I decided April has eyes that twinkle and glow, a head full of brilliant ideas that grow, like a flying car or a talking drone, a lighter laptop or a faster phone. These are the crafts April loves to do with their hands that can weld and hammer and screw. So as I wrote April's story, an envisioning of April's persona arose in my mind. So I do something funny whenever I'm stuck with a story. You must have seen these funny personality tests online which tell you what sort of vegetable you are or which Jane Austen character you resemble the most. Though I doubt they are based on sound science and psychology, they help me. They serve as a sort of springboard, a sort of diving point from which I can delve into the character's psyche a little better. And I also do this when I write novels. It helps me to typify my characters and better predict how they would react in various scenarios. So that I did that with April, and turns out April is a broccoli. So April, in my mind, is someone who is very friendly, extroverted, outgoing, intuitive, empathetic, and very organized, apart from also being very generous and kind. Yeah, so April is in some very illustrious company. So this is Techport, where April lives, and it's a port city. It's near a sea called the USB Sea, and there are data ships floating on the USB Sea, and they dock into port with the USB. And Paris suggested making Techport a smart city. So this is how I try to explain it. The lights know when to turn on, and the cars know where to go, and the playground keeps itself warm even when it snows. I'm sure this playground would be very useful in Edinburgh. So I tested this out on my daughters. It's very convenient living with people who belong to your target as you write them. So in the interest of science, I'm going to refer to them as testing subject 1, who's 8, and testing subject 2, who's 5. I will be paying for this in 5 minutes when I go sit there. So, so I read this out to testing subject 2 and asked her what she made of it. And she told me that it sounds like the place is really clever. And I thought, yes, because that's exactly what I was going for. And this is April's lab. I imagined it as a circular place which offers panoramic views of Techport. And this is the part where the story actually starts. One day, loud knocks sounded on April's front door. April, tomorrow's New Year's Eve, and therefore, we've got a super special idea for the super special date. We want to build the most awesome tower to celebrate. This was said by Spark, one of the microchip guardians. The microchip guardians were among Techport's coolest technicians. So this brings us to one of the very important themes that we've tried to incorporate in the book. It's a subliminal theme, so it's not something that's discussed overtly. And this is a phrase that's been bandied about, copy-pasted from every website. And I would argue that mere ubiquity is not enough to ensure equity, but I'm not going to go into that now. So we try to do this using the microchip guardians. So if you look closely, you will see that the